Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my July TBR. And you might be wondering, why? Why would you create another TBR, Charlie, given the fact that over the last 2 months you have famously put TBRs on at the beginning of each month and never read the books that are actually on there? And I'll tell you for why. Because I like making lists. That's the only thing. Also, I'm hoping that some of you might be here to hold me accountable and say, Charlie, you're not reading these books that you keep saying that you're going to be reading. So the first 3 books on this list were part of my alternative women's prize long list, however many months ago that was. I mean, that's all over and done with now, the actual one. And I'd planned on this being finished before then. So we have The Furrows by Namwali Serpell, Tale About Grief. Can we cope with a tale about grief at the moment? I don't know, but we're going to try. How We Disappeared by Jin-Jin Lee. Apparently, famously traumatic, according to my good friend Charlie of Charlie Brooke Reads. But will we read it? I don't know. That's for me not to know and for you to try and force me. Then we have The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna, Quinn, a book that I've been talking about reading since December. Look how big that book is. Will I read it? Probably not. Will I decide, do you know, that's a bit of a big book for me. Is that something that I really want to risk? All that time spent on one book. I did consider reading it when I've got a bit of time off work, but you never know whether that'll actually happen. Fall of the Argosi by Sebastien de Castell, because I read Way of the Argosi last month and liked it. So I thought, why not follow this into the next month? You know, why not? Can't be worse than the first. Could be better. I liked it. Maybe I like a bit of fantasy adventure, something quick to read. Then I have A Game of Hide and Seek by Elizabeth Taylor. This is the final Elizabeth Taylor novel that I've got to read. And I've looked at the back already, and do you want to know something? It sounds like there's another affair. The number of affairs that characters have in Elizabeth Taylor novels has lent itself to the fact that I actually feel like they're growing indistinguishable from one another. And I read the blurb of this, and I feel like I've read this blurb before, and I don't know whether I've actually read this book. I will have to go through my journal. I don't think I've read it. It's just that the blurb sounds so similar to something else I've read by the author, but they're all moulding into one at this moment. All of the books that Elizabeth Taylor seemed to write in the middle of her career dealt with people having affairs. I don't know what it is. I don't know what she was trying to say. I don't know what her husband was getting up to if she did have one. I've not read her biography, but there's a lot of affairs. Maybe that's just what people did in the 50s and 60s. I don't know. I wasn't born yet. Then we have The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst by our very own Katie Lumsden of Books and Things. I was lucky enough to get approved for a copy of this on NetGalley, and I plan to read it in July, and then I am hoping, so this gives me 10 days now, 10 days, count them, to read this book, review this book, in time for the book's release on Thursday the 18th of July, the day after my birthday, if you're wondering. You know, you probably weren't. I mean, I don't celebrate it, but it's happening. I am going to be another year older. Every single day I age a decade, and technically every single day I age 3 decades. Then we have Streets of Laredo by Larry McMurtry. You can see I'm 230 pages into this. I keep putting it down, can't decide whether to DNF it or not and get rid of all of his books, so we're just going to keep having a go and see how we do. If you've read Larry McMurtry and you'd get rid of him, then please feel free to let me know. You know, we're hanging on by a thread here. Then I have Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami, and this edition was translated by J. Rubin. I couldn't decide between this and 1Q84, so I decided to go for the one that's supposedly more realist and shorter. However, looking at it, all I seem to be getting mentions of is death. Apparently a favourite topic of mine, so great. Then I have the Infernal Design Machines of Dr Hoffman, because as I mentioned in the video where I talked about all of the books from my shelves, Ed of Gagging for Lit had recommended that I read this and call it a favourite of his, and then he went and said it again in the comments, so I thought, well, best put it on the list and try and give it a go. And then I have No Love Lost by Rachel Ingalls, because this is selected novellas. I have read 2 of them, And when I am writing them down in my journal, I include them as a single novella because that is how I believe they were released as single novellas. So I'm not counting this whole book as one book. I'm counting it as 8 books because that's who I am as a person. I have to read 14 books this month to get myself back on track to what I want to be. You know, I like to be reading 10 books a month, so I need to hit 70 by the end of this month, and the only way we're going to do it is by calling each individual novella in here a separate book. They were published like that originally, so that's what I'm going to do. You should be lucky that when I'm reading poetry collections, I'm not counting each separate poem. But technically you could say that about short story collections, and you could say that about chapters. But I have seen that some people actually don't count books, they count page numbers, and they want to hit a specific page number by the end of the year. Should we try that next year to try and get through some of the bigger books? I don't know. That is my TBR for July. Are there any books that you recommend I get to before others? Are there books that you would throw off this list and say they aren't worth my time? Feel free to let me know because I very easily take stuff to the charity shop nowadays. I hope that you have enjoyed this video because until next time, that is all. I mean, look at me creating a thumbnail for this video so that really you wouldn't even need to watch it if you had half the chance.